What's up, guys? Here we are today again in the car cast. Just leaving the gym. And it's Monday, September 13th, 14th. September 14th. I'm losing track of these days, but people are all worried about the end of the world again. Now it's the 16th of September. The 23rd is the end of certain calendars again. And I gotta say, people are probably, freaking out about certain aspects of that. And then other people are just oh, we've heard this so many fucking times before, like, too many world endings, and people are probably saying to themselves, wow, another end of the world. Well, there never is going to be an end of the world, just like the beginning is so far out of the realm of our consciousness that it doesn't matter in a grand scheme of things, to our human experience, that is. Now, let's understand this world, because people are freaking out. I know one of my friends is really stockpiling ammunition and food and supplies and things like this, because he is worried that something really bad is going to happen. Some martial law. FEMA is making these death camps inside of old Walmarts and Target superstores and stuff like this. And, this Jade Helm thing, which is massive military training happening right now in the continental United States, of course. And it's getting people worried. People are thinking well, what's going on? Why is our military practicing so hardcore? And why are they shutting down Walmarts and super Targets and things like that? So the way the government keeps everybody in the dark all the time, it's easy to understand and get, hooked into the hype, so to speak, of what the fuck is going on. And but I have a simpler solution than that. I think that people will believe what they want to believe, and if you want to believe that FEMA death camps are a legitimate thing, then that's your right. And by all the power within you, you're more than welcome to believe that. And you're going to be in disagreement with other people who think that this world is just a beautiful spinning globe flying around in space. You could live by that dogma your whole life and never question it, and that's fine too. But what I myself have gone through is a dramatic transformation, and a spiritual awakening is what kicked it all off. By awakening to a spiritual nature and knowing that I am actually, my physical body is an extension of my spiritual energy, which is God. My spiritual energy is my God. And just like your spiritual energy is your God, that's why many cultures will say there's more than one God. And that is a misinterpretation of really what the God energy is, which is the force of your spirituality that is the total part of your spirit. And that comes through this channel, this physical channel. So you are a spiritual being having a human experience. And in order to have that human experience, and this is going to sound crazy, believe me, I'm not religious in any way, but the whole concept of having a physical experience means that there has to be a physical area or physical plane of existence for us to be part of. Let me explain this real quick. Okay, and this is going to blow a lot of people's minds, but at the same time, it's something that needs to be thrown out there so that people can kind of get a grasp of where we're going with this. But the Earth, like you commonly believe, is a round ball, right? That's what you think it is. That's what you think. And the importance of this, by the way, is that Earth is your reality. There's no other place that you've ever existed that you know of, physically. There's no other planet that you've ever been to. You've never gone to the moon. You've never jumped into space or any of that type of thing, physically, that is. And that is the beginning of this big myth about your reality. Now, the real reality is that You don't live on a spinning ball. You live on a flat plane of existence, okay? And there's all kinds of different layers of that existence as well. But in the physical world that you perceive, there's only one area, and that's the earth as you know it. Now, when you start to look into this yourself, you'll realize that the earth is not a round ball. And so that starts to accelerate your questioning about this reality, and it throws you outside of the current reality that you're in a purgatory type status, where you're just like, okay, now you're dislodged from the earth reality, and then you're kind of in the middle. And until you realize that you're actually a spiritual being in that, then you start to come back around. The natural progression of things is for you to hear something like this that just uproots your whole reality, and then you kind of have a freak out moment. And after that freak out moment, then you start to say, wait a minute, hold on. Now I'm in this point of, I have to figure this out. I have to understand what the fuck's going on here. Are we in a spiritual world? Is this like the Matrix? Or where the fuck are we right now in this reality? I mean, because I could physically feel everything around me. I can physically feel the hair on my skin. I can physically hear sounds and see sights and smell smells and all that. So I'm physically there. I'm physically receptive to all these physical things throughout nature. So the questions start to really populate your mind, and you start to wonder, where the fuck am I right now? What is this? Is this a game? And it's not a game. There's nothing to fear. This is a physical reality that was built basically for you to have a physical experience, the human experience. This was the reality that's been created for you. Now, I know people are probably saying, well, what about the stars and the sun and the moon and planets and things like that? How is that possible? Where the hell do they fit into this equation? Well, this is stuff that you're going to find out along the way, but believe me, it'll all make sense when you start to realize what it is. Now, I'm not going to even waste your time going into any of that stuff, so you're just going to have to figure that out later as you go. But what's important right now is for you to kind of start waking up, because as people are saying, there's this worry about 2015 September, like the 16th, and like that's the day that they say Wall Street's going to crash, and the 23rd and the 13th, and all these like calendar ends and these cycle ends and these blood moon cycles and all this stuff. Everything is culminating at this exact point in time. That's like freaking people out. And the people that are easily subdued by this kind of rhetoric and crazy notions that people are just using for fear so that they can continue the control scheme, that is what people are buying into in great numbers. And this is why I have to speak on behalf of this, because if the majority of people on this earth want to believe a deception, a lie, and they want to call it their reality, they're free to do that. But by doing so, everyone that is turned to think this way brings at least 100 people with them. And so that is a cancer in its own way. It's the societal cancer that just happens to be that way. So that is one of the things that we need to be aware of, is that the more people that think negatively, they're creating more negativity, and they're bringing more negativity out in other people and other places. So that is kind of the importance of why we have to understand where we are in this grand design. Okay? Now, let me sidetrack for a second. Me personally, I'm not religious. I've never been religious. I've looked into Christianity and Catholicism, and I've done certain homework about certain situations, and I've been interested in why people are so taken over by religion, And I'm baffled by it for the most part, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense how you could just literally not question anything and just say, you know what, this book was given to my generations of my family, and now I'm getting entrusted with this book, the Bible or whatever, and I'm learning the lessons from it and all this stuff, and it's just kind of BS to me. It always has been. And even after I've had my spiritual awakening, I can tell you that religion is just another game for a specific purpose. And that purpose, ultimately, is control. The fact that there's a system for money, that's part of control. Because once you have money, you have debt, which is another thing that's just out of this world, and yet we all passively agree to it. Besides that, there's so many other aspects of control. Like, besides the religion, well, science. Science, again, is just another form of religion. Science itself, when you just listen to scientists who have degrees, they literally wake up, read the news, get to the observatory or the science lab or whatever they're doing, and they start asking serious, hard questions, and they start backing it up with serious, hard facts. Well, that's what we typically believe science is. When these scientists or preachers begin to speak, often they tell us what they assume to be correct reality because they've done their scientific method. But the thing is, with science, is that any scientist, they'll give you whatever equation that fits. That's how a scientist works. They use that science almost to their own destruction, if you will. Here's what happens with scientists and people that are very intellectual. They think they know a lot more than anybody else just because they spent years practicing or studying or learning or whatever it is. And because of this, it puts them on a plateau or a level that's higher than anybody else. So the bottom of the totem of knowledge starts with the reality that you exist in. Now, a vast majority of scientists don't realize that they've been duped. They don't realize that we're not on a spinning globe. All the equations that come as a result, they're all fraudulent. They're all fake or incorrect or fraud or whatever you want to call it. If the scientist knows that he's asking a bumpus question and he still finds the good result, he's still going to use it because that could help him propel his career. And if he finds out that something is wrong, he'll just add a new equation to it. And then before you long, you'll be able to correct it. That's what those chalkboards full of equations are for. All you really need is the root of the equation and the simple answer. But if it doesn't add up, then you're able to just add new integers and new numbers and new whatever science, math terms you want to use until you find an answer that fits appropriately. Well, that's not the way things work. You can't just do that. You have to understand where you come from the beginning. And this is what a lot of scientists don't even know. So how are they giving us correct answers to questions that, first of all, don't even have a basis of the correct reality before you're asking them, before you're wasting a whole life's work, before you're writing doctorates and getting Nobel Prizes for your work in a made-up field, so to speak? That is really what's happening. So science, religion, it's all bullshit because it has nothing to do with the reality. The difference here is that the stance, it's like Republican and Democratic, science or religion. There's that duality, one or the other, okay? So my life growing up, I was always a science kind of minded person. So I would say, you know what, I don't believe that there's a God or there's a angel or there's yada yada. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. Why would a God, being so infinitely powerful and so infinitely beyond whatever is we understand, why would they impart themselves in a in a dumbed down human version and requiring some sort of respect or idolization. Why would that be a requirement for them to allow you into their good graces? They created you from the start, so they should have that absolute love, right? That is what God's supposed to be, right? It's not supposed to be a guy who just comes down to earth every couple thousand years and lets his son die for us, for our sins or whatever. That's how he... I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. So it's got to be all metaphoric and rhetoric and just fantastic stories. Now, those stories being incorrect or being some sort of fantasy, when we start to believe them as true, then we can be controlled very easily. The opposite is true with science. If we start to allow the scientists who have this amazing knowledge and years of experience, if we just allow them to say whatever they want and we believe it, we're just as guilty or just as naive as we would be if we were practicing religion. Except instead of praying, now we're reading new magazines or whatever it is. And it's really just two sides of the same coin. That's how I look at it. See, the real reality is that God is within each one of us. We're an extension of that in a physical form. So the point that there is a dark and light is a human idea. Just like pain, you have to have pain in order to experience joy. That's fake. That's, again, another human ideal. And this God energy that's within us makes no judgments. It is not a passive force that just resides there as like something we can hack into and just like the internet or something. It's not like that. It's not like an electrical conduit that we just turn the light on and it somehow, starts to energize the room or lights up the room. That is all human-based construct of imagination. This is one of the things that you might learn if you ever get to the point where you awaken spiritually, where you realize that God energy is just within you. It's within everyone. And each person has their own God energy within them. Now, as we are controlled by the system runners, we start to forget that we even have that spiritual connection. It's not something you turn on and off. It's something that's always there. It's never ending. So it's not something that you can ever be separated from. If you are, you're dead. Your physical body will shut off and not be anything left. You'd be in a coma, so to speak. And that's a good analogy for what it would be like if you had no spirituality in you. You would just be an empty shell of a person hooked up to a life support system because you have no brain function in you. So the idea of light and dark being this good and bad and there's this duality is a human ideal. It's something that we wrap our minds around to make sense of. And so any of the teachers that have stood before claiming that there's this light and dark are just human idealists or human philosophers. That is it. They for all intents and purposes, have never bridged over to another reality or existence. I have. and I'm just a regular guy. I had a spiritual awakening one day, and from that point on, I've started to unlock the information that I've already had in me, which is something that is already within you as well. And you can make sense of it by calling it intuition. That's a great one. Intuition is what that gut feeling that you have where you're like, no, my brain is saying no, that's wrong, that's right. But my heart, my gut is saying, well, there's no other way. It's just what it is. And then when we deny that intuition, when we deny that inner thought, we end up being uprooted. We end up going the wrong path, or the path of more resistance than it would have been. And it's all because we've been feared into thinking with just this and not with our whole entire universal self. So as a human experiencer, or as a soul or spirit or God, whatever you want to call it, having a human physical experience, that is what you need to understand. So once you get past this, you can start to realize that 9/11 was a lie. The government is a lie. The Illuminati, all this stuff is just built in place so that it can help the system of control. That's all it is. It's a system of control, and it's bigger than you could ever imagine. And it's stopped human experience from being its full potential. Now, one of the things that you'll understand once you become awakened, truly spiritually awakened, will you understand this concept that there's no duality, there is no right or wrong, that means as well, and you're here for your experience. So if you're one of those starving children in Africa, I'm sorry to say, for the people that are unaware of this, that's what they chose to experience. That's what their soul, on a deep level, needed to experience for their next evolution. Think about the world and the reality that you live in as a spiritual domain. And you're just one small little player in that big, expansive reality, okay? So think about your soul is you, okay? So you're the soul, and you've been around for thousands of years or more, and you're going to be around for thousands or eons or just infinitely for more. And when you start to gauge that, and you start to think about time being relative to only human experience, then you start to realize that once this body is no longer here, we revert back to this, just the pure kinetic spiritual energy that is within us, until we're ready to do something else, or until we are desiring something else in that experience. And when you move on from that, you might be that starving child in Africa, or you might be that crooked politician, or you could be the top seat of the Illuminati, or whatever it is. Who cares? Who knows? It's part of the experience. We could go on for infinite amounts of time saying who you would be the next time, or who you want to be. And now I'm not talking about reincarnation, because reincarnation is a human ideal. It's not a spiritual ideal. Think about it. The majority, 99.99% of the reality that's around you is human created, in the way that our minds have been subjectified to whatever, and we've created this construct around it. That's one of the things that you must understand to move forward, is that, again, this reality that you live in, it's actually projected from within you. You are the creator of this reality. So no spirit ever can create a physical reality. It's the physical nature of things that creates a physical reality. The spirit is able to communicate with the physical and thus create something physical, but it has to have a physical connection in that world in order for it to manifest something physically. That being said, you are the creator of the physical reality that is within your view, okay? So when we talk about FEMA death camps, when people are saying FEMA death camps and all this weird shit, World War III is happening, the Jews run the Illuminati, I mean, when people start to say this kind of stuff, they're only playing on a physical level, and they're allowing such information to create the reality in front of them. When you start to get to that point where that's your mindset, it becomes your reality. This is the thing that a lot of people are missing, is that you are the one who's creating the reality that you see. My interpretation of green and your interpretation of green could be two different things completely. In fact, you could smell green and I could hear green, and that would be the same thing if we were talking about it relatively. So that is why the world is a relative thing, because it's all within you that creates whatever it is that you see, feel, touch, smell, hear, whatever. So when you start to think about the end of the world, stop thinking about the end of the world as a physical end to the world. It's not the physical end to the world. And I'll tell you something, I'll put something in your mind, okay? The end of the world is when you wake up, because you're no longer going to be on this round earth model of a world. And you're no longer going to be enslaved inside of that construct. You're no longer going to be part of the rat race, so to speak. You're going to be awoken, and you're going to be instantly brought to the next level of your physical and mental consciousness. And your spiritual evolution will take a step forward or up or whatever you want to call it. And now, again, there's no up or down, there's no left or right, there's no duality like we humans like to think. Okay? So when I say up and down or whatever, it's only because I know you're human and you're thinking in those relative terms. So we can use those, okay? But I'm using a huge disclaimer now saying this. I want you to understand that there is no such thing as left, right, up, down duality. There's no such thing. It's a human construct, a human concept, a human thought, okay? And since we're all human, it all makes sense in that way. So this is what I want to say today. It is almost mid-September 2015, and I really want people to start to realize that there is a way to wake up. That's what I'm here for. That's what so many others are here for. We're here to help awaken the next batch of awakees, so to speak, or people that want to wake up. These human experiencers coming to the reality that they are having a human experience. It's quite an amazing thing.